I want to go back to our second reading today for fear that we might read St. Paul too seriously. Right? I have a hunch that as St. Paul is saying these things to the Corinthians, that he has a little bit of a smirk on his face. Right? Talking about the difference between celibate life and married life. Right? Paul himself has chosen celibacy, right? He's felt called to full-time ministry in serving the Lord. So he says, an unmarried man, the celibate, is anxious about the things of the Lord, how he may please the Lord. But a married man is anxious about the things of the world, how he may please his wife, and he is divided. So I can't tell if St. Paul has too high a view of marriage or too low. Right? Because on one hand, if he has too low a view of marriage, then he's kind of treating marriage like a distraction. Well, it'd be better if you were all celibate, right? Because you're so busy trying to please your wives. Now, on the other hand, I've met married people, and I'm sure St. Paul had too. And let's be honest, our marriages would be a whole lot better off if our husbands and wives spent a little more time trying to please each other. But I think you need to have that attitude of focus on Christ regardless of your vocation. Right? Because a married man who is anxious about the things of the world isn't going to please his wife either. Right? We're not to be anxious about the things of this world at all. And if you're living your married vocation in a holy way, right? If you're finding your path to holiness through that other person, then it's not a thing of anxiety. It's a thing of great joy, right? Even 2:30 in the morning when it's your turn to change the diaper, you don't want to get up, but you get up, right? It's not to please the spouse. It's to please the Lord. It's out of love for this beautiful child that the Lord has given you. And you may not be happy about it at the time, but it is a deep joy to give yourself, right, to shed your blood, your sweat, your tears for the sake of another. That's the essence of vocation. But of the two, if we're talking about married life or celibate life, our world at least has some respect for married life, but our world is increasingly losing its respect for celibate life. And I can only assume that that's because we haven't been living our celibacy well enough. We haven't been great enough models of being centered on Christ to be convincing in our vocation. That's on us who are celibate. Right? Because I'm not celibate because I couldn't get married. I'm not celibate because women stopped being interesting or beautiful. Right? I'm not celibate because I had nothing else to do with my life. I guess I should become a priest. It's not how it works. Right? I joke sometimes that I discerned celibacy a few years before I discerned priesthood, but I'm not exactly sure that's true anymore. As I look back, right, I found that I wasn't called to the single-hearted devotion to one woman. And I didn't have that devotion of heart to the spouse in image of Christ's love for us, that full gift of himself for that one woman. Now, I could have then just said, I won't get married, I'll just, sleep with one woman after another. Serial polygamy, we call it sometimes. Right? I could have looked for my pleasure in a number of relationships. But that would not have gotten at what the Lord was calling me to. Right? It takes the same virtues to be a good priest, to be a good religious brother, to be a good husband, to be a good man. It's the same virtues. Right? Fidelity to a person is still fidelity to a person, even if that person is Jesus Christ in his Eucharistic self. Right? So the same fidelity that allows you to look a woman in the eye and say, I will love you and honor you all the days of my life to the exclusion of every other woman who might come along, including your slightly nicer, slightly friendlier, slightly prettier twin sister. Because it's not about me. It's about heaven. And you're my ticket there. Right? And not just that, but I want to make sure it won't be heaven unless you're there. So I'm going to do my darndest to sanctify you. Now, if that's not how you're living married life, what do I know? Right? You who are married, maybe you can describe it better. But I had the marriage retreat this morning for those who are preparing, who had our marriage course here at St. Henry's, all virtually, of course. But we had a number of young couples, and I do this every year. I have them look at each other and say, I love you. And they all get giggly because they're still in the giggly phase, right? Oh, I'm saying I love you in front of other people, ha 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 ha. I say, look at each other again and say, I'm going to make you a saint. And they giggle a little less. And I say, and look at them a third time and say, even if it kills me. Right? That's the gift of self we're talking about. Right? Because the one who we're imitating in every vocation, if we're doing it right, is him who said, this is my body given for you. It's him who said, take and drink, this is my blood, which will be poured out for the forgiveness of your sins. When was the last time you thought of your marriage as forgiving her sins? When was the last time you made sacrifice, penance for his soul? Right? That's not till death do us part. That's for life, for the whole of life and love. I will love you and honor you all the days of my life. Is that any greater or less privilege than me being able to stand at the altar in the person of Jesus Christ and say, this is my body? Is that any greater or less intimacy than when I'm sitting at the bedside of my dying child, even though they might be in their 90s? They call me father, they're my child. Praying the rosary, waiting for their natural children to show up. Being with them till death do us part, so that they know Christ is there. You know, it's amazing. I've been one of the few people privileged to go into the nursing home recently. And it has truly been a privilege. When I show up, they light up. They light up. Man, it's like you guys get to have when you come home from work and you open the door and your kids see you. And they scream, they squeal, and they run for you. Daddy! Every time somebody says, oh good, Father's here, instead of what I sometimes hear, oh no, Father's here, everybody act natural. That's the other side of fatherhood. Because you get that too. Dad's coming. Put it away. Quick, get to the dishes. Right? If I'm living my celibacy well in total dedication to Christ, it's no different from a good father living his marriage well in total dedication to Christ. It's just that happens that when I get close and intimate with the Lord, the fruitfulness of that is the grace poured out in your hearts. But is that any greater or less than the fruitfulness of you giving yourselves in the marital embrace? Right? I will love you and honor you all the days of my life. Love and honor. It's not what I get out of it. It's what I am able to give and the joy I receive in giving. Now, if that's the married life that you're living, then I am a little jealous of that. As I'm sure sometimes you get a little jealous of what I get to do as a priest. A little healthy jealousy of the other vocation calls, I think is a good thing. I get jealous of monks all the time. Right? You mean I could have my whole day revolve around prayer and work in the garden? No council meetings? No 2:30 in the morning phone calls, Father, I need to talk to somebody. And yet, if I didn't have those, I would miss them. Right? When somebody passes in the middle of the night and then the folks call me the next morning later after. And this isn't an indictment of you if you've done that. But I always do feel a little left out. Why didn't you call? I wanted to be there. Right? Well, Mom wouldn't have heard you. No, I didn't want to be there for Mom alone. I want to be there for you too. You who are going through the loss. You're my kids too. Right? And I've been corrected by other priests for overly paternalizing my role. Right? Getting too into it, so to speak. But I truly believe if you have the guts to call me Father, then I have the responsibility to act like one. That isn't always easy, right? Especially when I have to be dad. Not father, but dad. It's always tempting, especially when you're in the seminary and you haven't really gotten up and preached a whole lot yet, right? To get this idea that someday I'm going to get up and give the fire and brimstone homily that I've always wanted to give, right? The priest version of that dad talk, that one. But I've never actually done it because the people I preach to are actual people, not the ideal children that don't exist either. Because I know you guys are living actual lives. And as much as I'd like to lay out the ideal for you, and I still strive to, don't get me wrong, but if I try to do it with a little more kindness, it's because I've been yelled at and I know what that feels like. Now, that's not saying there aren't times when yelling is appropriate. But from Dad, don't you want to know he loves you too? So if I go a little soft on you, it's because, I'm that dad, right? If I was married, I'm sure my wife would be saying, you spoil those kids. Well, good. Because what I give you is life itself, right? And this isn't some hypothetical, right? This isn't just feeding you a snack because you're a little bit hungry. This is the bread of life for whom our souls thirst, right? Our hearts are restless until they rest in you. And the privilege of being able to be that guy who gives you the bread of life on a regular basis, who forgives your sins in that way that only Dad can, that Dad, the Father, and to stand in his place, if that's the fruitfulness of a celibate life, then maybe it is a higher calling in the sense that it's fatherhood elevated to the cross. And I love it.